Daniel in the lion's den. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Daniel in the lion's den. Thank you for joining my YouTube channel. My name is Donna and I upload faith-filled videos. This is so good and it's so uplifting that I think you're going to really enjoy it, because I did. I enjoyed it when I was during my Bible study time. I really enjoyed this. Come with me to Daniel chapter 6, and we're going to read probably the entire chapter of chapter 6. And it says, beginning at verse 1, "It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps, to be over the whole kingdom." So you have King Darius, and he is setting up his kingdom, his pyramid. So we have King Darius, and he set up over the kingdom 120 satraps to be over the whole kingdom, the entire kingdom. Verse 2, "And over these 3 governors, of whom Daniel was one, that the satraps might give account to them, so that the king would suffer no loss." So here we have the king, we have 3 governors, and then we have 120 satraps who are under the governors. So we have this pyramid that's going on. In verse 3, "Then this Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and satraps, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king gave thought to setting him over the whole realm." So Daniel distinguished himself from the other 2 governors. He was someone that the king really admired because he had an excellent spirit. And so he was very faithful to the king, and he had a very excellent spirit, and the king noticed that. And so he decided to set Daniel over the entire realm, the whole realm. In verse 4, "So the governors and satraps sought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom." Now, apparently, King Darius had discussed this with someone, that he was thinking of setting up Daniel over the whole realm. And in verse 4, it says, "So the governors and satraps sought to find some charge against Daniel." They didn't want Daniel over the whole realm. They didn't want him to have this position. They didn't like the fact that this particular king saw something great in Daniel, and he found favor in Daniel. And sometimes we're in positions where we have been faithful, and then a leader comes and they see our faithfulness, they see our excellence, they see when we come to work on time, when we're due diligence and doing our work, that we're faithful, that we stay late, that we go the extra mile. And sometimes they begin to ponder and think, maybe I should set this person up in this particular position, because of their excellence. And so these men could not find anything wrong with Daniel. They found no fault. They found him to be faithful. And in verse 5, it says, "Then these men said, 'We shall not find any charge against this Daniel unless we find it against him concerning the law of his God.'" So now that they can't find anything against Daniel due to his work ethic, now we're going to move on to his beliefs. And sometimes people will do that. When they can't find any fault in you, they'll grab the next thing to you that you cherish, whether it's your spouse or your children. They'll do something to harm someone that is in close proximity to you, to hurt or to harm you. And verse 6, it says, "So these governors and satraps thronged before the king and said thus to him, 'King Darius, live forever. These men have come together. They have grouped themselves together against Daniel. And sometimes you will have that in your life where you know two people don't like each other, but they will come in unity together to fight against you. And so here we have in verse 7, it says, all the governors of the kingdom, the administrators and satraps, the counselors and advisors have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whoever petitions any man or God for 30 days, except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. So they got together with everybody else. This was a plot and a plan. They got together with everyone else, even before they petitioned the king. They wanted to make sure that the king had no reason to question anything that they were doing regarding this plot, anything. They didn't want him to question anything. So they got everybody together. And sometimes we're in positions where we come into agreement with individuals when we don't know what the downfall is. We don't know what their plot is, what their plan is. And so sometimes that's why we have to be careful of what we come into agreement with. When someone comes to us with information, we have to be careful how we handle that, who we join together, because it could be a plot to hurt someone who hasn't done any wrong. And in verse 8 it says, now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter. They wanted this king to make a decree, to create this law that can't be altered. Once he signed this law, no one, even including the king, could not and would not be able to go back and make any revisions to this particular law. So they came up with this plot. They got everybody involved, administrators, advisors, counselors. They got everybody together before they went to the king. And so they go to the king and they make this petition. Verse 9, therefore King Darius signed the written decree. He signed it. He didn't know that there was a plot. He didn't know that there was a plan. He didn't know that there was evil work behind this decree. Verse 10, now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home, and in his upper room, with his windows open toward Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times that day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as was his custom since early days. Daniel knew what they were doing. He knew what they were doing. And Daniel knew once this petition was signed, he went home to his house and he knelt down and prayed 3 times that day. He knew what they were doing. He knew that they were plotting and he knew what they were doing. He went home and he kneeled down 3 times and he prayed and gave thanks to God, as was his custom. See, they were trying to stop him from praying for 30 days. 30 days, because they knew what Daniel would do every day. They saw his faithfulness. They knew how faithful he was to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because they didn't worship the same God. King Darius did not worship the same God. And Daniel, this was in a period when Daniel and the children of Israel, including Daniel, had been exiled out of Jerusalem. There had been a battle and the others had won the battle, and they sent so many of them over into their country. And so although they were in their country, they were allowed to continue to pray and seek their God. And so Daniel continued to pray as he did every day. Verse 11, then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. They monitored him. You ever hear anybody talk about monitoring spirits? They monitored him. They watched him. So apparently they were near his home. In order to watch him to see what it was he was doing, they were near his home. They were monitoring him. Then these men, verse 11, then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. And they went before the king and spoke concerning the king's decree. Have you not signed a decree that every man who petitions any man, any god or man within 30 days, except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered and said, the thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter. They went back and asked him, remember you wrote this decree? It was you that wrote this decree. And the king is like, yes, I wrote the decree that no one should be able to do anything. 13, so they answered and said before the king, that Daniel, the Daniel, the one that you like so much, the one that you favor so much, the one that you feel like have an excellent spirit in him, that Daniel, who is one of the captives from Judah, because they had been exiled, does not show due regard for you. They're trying to bring division between King Darius and Daniel. It says, O king, or for the decree that you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. Sometimes when people see relationships, a good, sound relationship, you may have a leader, you may have someone that is a subordinate, and they have this wonderful relationship. And sometimes people envy that. And so what they do, they try to bring a wedge in between relationships. And that is what is happening in this case. They're trying to bring a wedge between King Darius and Daniel because they don't want Daniel to be elevated to this new position. Verse 14, and the king, when he heard these words, were greatly displeased with himself and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. And he labored to the going down of the sun to deliver him. This king was concerned. He didn't think about Daniel. He didn't think about the people who had been exiled. That were living inside of his kingdom. He wasn't thinking about that. He signed the petition without asking any questions. Now he's disheartened because now this gets Daniel in trouble, and he knows, the king knows, and these men know that he cannot go back. He can't go back and make any revisions to this particular law. And it says that the king was greatly displeased with himself and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. He was trying to come up with some kind of conclusion to get Daniel out of this particular situation. Verse 15, then these men approached the king and said to the king, know, O king, that it is the law of the Medes and Persians that no decree or statute which the king establishes may be changed. They're reminding him of what he wrote. I don't care how you're trying to get Daniel out of this. You wrote a law and you made a decree that nothing about this particular law could be changed. So the king, verse 16, so the king gave the command, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. But the king spoke, saying to Daniel, your God. See, the king did not worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The king says, your God, whom you serve continually, he will deliver you. He will deliver you. Your God will deliver you. There had to be something about God. There had to be something, the reason that he saw this excellence in Daniel. He had to believe that God had played some huge part in that. And he told Daniel, he spoke it into existence. He says, your God, whom you serve continually. Daniel not only was faithful to the king, he was faithful to God. He says, who you serve continually, he will deliver you. He spoke it into existence. Verse 17, then a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den. They're trying to make sure that Daniel doesn't escape at all. They're trying to make sure that Daniel is disposed of by the lions. Then a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den. And the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the signets of his lords, that the purpose concerning Daniel might not be changed. I can imagine how that king felt. Daniel had been faithful to him. I can imagine how he felt, but he had to abide by the law. There was no way around it. He had to abide by the law. Verse 18, now the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting, and no musicians were brought before him. Also his sleep went from him. He didn't eat. He did not eat, and he had no musician to come and entertain him for the evening. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. He was concerned about Daniel because he did not realize that these men had plotted. Now you gotta think about, these men were doing it. They put the king in a distressed state, in a state of anxiety and a state of worry. They put their own king in a state of despair. He worried all night about Daniel. Verse 19, then the king arose very early in the morning and went in haste to the den of lions. He's a king. Most of the time, kings send their servants to check something out. But no, this king rose early in the morning. When daylight comes, I'm going back to the den of lions. I am going to see what happened to Daniel. In verse 20, and when he came to the den, he cried out with a lamenting voice to Daniel. The king spoke, saying to Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, because granted, there's no way that this God could not bring Daniel out when Daniel served this God continually. He says, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions. This king yelled out, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions? And in verse 21, then Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. Can you imagine how the king felt? The relief that came off of him when he heard the voice of Daniel. Can you imagine how he felt? In verse 22, my God, this is what Daniel says, my God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, so that they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before him. Daniel said, I never did anything wrong. I was found innocent before him. And also, O king, I have done no wrong before you. I didn't do anything wrong to you. I didn't do anything wrong to the Lord. And Daniel spoke these words. He says, my God sent his angels to shut the lions' mouths. Verse 23, now the king was exceedingly glad for him and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. Get him out of there, the king commands. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no injury whatsoever was found on him. Because he believed in his God, nothing happened to him. You know, their stories says that Daniel used some of the lions as a pillow. Daniel was not worried at all because he believed in a living God. And because of his lifestyle, his faithfulness, his continual faithfulness to God caused the king to believe in Daniel's God. That is amazing. We have to be careful what we do, how we do it. We have to be faithful because people are watching us. They're watching us. They're watching to see what we do, how we commune with our God, how often we commune with our God. People are watching because sometimes when they start to see favor on you and they start to see a spirit of excellence on you, they're curious. They're curious. And so they start to monitor you sometimes to see what are they doing? How is it that they're, have this excellent spirit? This king was monitoring Daniel in a good way. Verse 24, and the king gave the command, and they brought those men who had accused Daniel. Sometimes we're accused for stuff we didn't even do. Sometimes we're accused because sometimes someone in leadership just says, hey, I'm thinking about giving, I'm thinking about promoting this person. And all of a sudden we're accused for something we didn't even do. We're minding our business, doing our own thing, and with all of a sudden here comes some kind of storm in our life or some kind of blow and we don't even understand what's going on, but we are being talked about behind closed doors. And sometimes when we're talked about behind closed doors, the enemy will come in and try to deter and break up relationships, causes wedges between relationships. He'll come in and try to destroy us and to accuse us and sometimes to try to make us to have a bad reputation, sometimes to assassinate our character, and sometimes we don't even know why. Why are these things happening to me? What have I done? I'm minding my own business. And so that is what happened in this particular case. Verse 24, and the king gave the command, and they brought these men who had accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions. Them, their children, and their wives. And the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces before they ever came to the bottom of the den. Now, I don't know if these men were cast there all at one time or each family was cast into the lion's den. And my thought is this: if it was each family that was cast into the lion's den, just imagine if you're the fifth family in line and there's 4 families in front of you. Each time a family is cast into the lion's den, just imagine what your heart is feeling, because you know that you are about to be cast into the den of lions. You're about to lose your life. Just imagine what type of devastation that is and how that mentally disturbs you. Men who had caused a disturbance with the king. Mind you, the king did not sleep one night. The king was anxious and worried and had anxiety and pacing the floor and did not eat and was disturbed and upset, probably had high blood pressure, just wondering, oh my God, I got this man in trouble and I didn't even realize what was going on, and these men deceived me. It wasn't only that they were penalized because of what they did to Daniel, they were also penalized because of what they did to the king. And they thought that, did they think about the fact that the king was going to be distraught? Did they think about what they were going to put this king through? Did they think about the retaliation and the judgment the king would lay on them? Because not only are they going to die, also their wives and their children. What about the innocent wives who had no control over what their husbands did? What about the children who expects their father to be the leader of their household and to make good decisions? And so they were all thrown into the lion's den. Verse 25, then King Darius wrote to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. 26, I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom, men must tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. If you don't do anything else, you are about to respect this God of Daniel. And what that means is not only are you going to respect the God of Daniel, you're going to respect God's children. And see, that's why individuals should not mess with children of God. It is dangerous to mess with children of God because you don't know the repercussions when you do something against God's children. And it says, for he is the living God. Now, this King Darius did not worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He did not worship Daniel's God, but he declared, for he is the living God. He knew without a doubt he was the living God. How can a man spend the night in a lion's den where there are lions everywhere and he not be destroyed, eaten up, bones broken? How is it that the next day when I go to the lion's den that the individual that is in there begins to speak and talk? He knew that this living God was a God that had power and strength to do anything. For he is the living God and steadfast forever. His kingdom is the one which shall not be destroyed. This is the king talking. He says, God, this God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, his kingdom will not be destroyed. And his dominion shall endure to the end. The heavenly dominion is going to endure till the end. The heavenly dominion. He talks about God's dominion, not his own. He has humbled himself. He's a king, but he humbled himself under the mighty hands of the Lord, and he began to speak about this particular God. In verse 27, he delivers and he rescues. This is a king talking. He delivers and rescues, and he works signs and wonders. This king had seen it all. He had seen it all. And he says he works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, because he knew that God sits on the throne, and he knew that God had worked a sign and a wonder in heaven, and God had worked a sign and wonder on earth. Whatsoever we bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever we loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And this king says he delivers and rescues, and he works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, who has delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. He knew that these lions had power. And in verse 28, it says, so this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Daniel went through this. He was innocent. He went through this, something he had nothing to do with, just because someone saw excellence in him, just because someone saw something in him and wanted to elevate him. He went through something just because he was faithful to God, just because he was faithful to the king. And through it all, God rescued him. And it says, so this Daniel prospered. And there may be some of you today, you may be going through something because someone wanted to elevate you. Someone saw something good in you, and you may be going through something. But hear me and hear me today. You may be going through, but God is going to rescue you. He's going to deliver you. And that individual, that leader, that person who sees the excellence in you, they are going to elevate you, and they're going to see your God, whether they know God or not. They're going to see your God in a different way. They're going to know that your God is powerful, that your God has strength, that your God delivers, that your God rescues, that your God works signs and wonders. And they're going to elevate you. Some of you are in the marketplace. You're in a position where you're working with people who don't even really know God, but they favor you. They favor you, and you've been faithful to them, and God is going to elevate you through them, and they're going to see your God in a different way. Remain faithful to the Lord and let God fight your battle. Let him fight your battle. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, may God bless you and keep you. Have a great day.